All right, guys, welcome to episode number 22 of the Base Camp Country Podcast. My name is Kix Nelson. Today we have a special guest with us by the name of Zach Haas. Zach is the owner of Creek Bottom Land Management and EHD-fense. We're going to talk about EHD and whitetail deer today. He's a aquatic specialist, aquatic biologist, I guess I should say. How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing good. I'm in AC now, so that's a good thing.
Well, what's your official title, man? I said aquatic biologist. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, so with the EHD-fense, my title is Senior Aquatic Biologist.
awesome. And is that your company? You own that, or?
So I'm the inventor of the product itself, and then we have some partners that are involved in it.
Well, for people that don't know, man, let's talk. Let's tell them what EHD is a little bit because we've all heard the rumors. We're going to separate some fact from fiction today when it comes to EHD and whitetail deer. So tell us exactly what EHD is, if you would.
Yeah, so EHD, or the full word is Episodic Hemorrhagic Disease. So that's why we say EHD, because why I say that every time. But so it's a viral, you could say, infection of whitetail deer and a lot of ruminant animals. So like even mule deer, pronghorn, things of that nature, they also can get it. Livestock can get it as well, like cattle. But it was first discovered in 1955 in New Jersey. And shortly thereafter, it was found again in the 70s. And over time, it just kept escalating into this big viral issue, all the way into, like, I think it was 2012. Just in Michigan alone, 14,000 deer were found dead of EHD. And so a lot of people also know of like blue tongue, for instance. So blue tongue is actually a variant of the disease. So they're both episodic hemorrhagic diseases. But with that said, they're both a little bit different as far as the variant, but they're carried by the same midge, which is the Culicodes midge, or a lot of people call them no-see-em. They're essentially this little gnat that resides in the water and eventually becomes an adult and bites a deer. And then the infection takes over. And a lot of times with deer, it can happen as quick as from the time it gets bit to death. Can be 48 to 72 hours. So it can be rapid. And other times it can be, 10 to 14 days. It all depends on the deer health, things of that nature, but it's very rapid. And a lot of the symptoms are fever, that's why we find a lot of times around water, but they'll get swelling. They'll look dizzy, like almost, you could say, drunk in a way, where they're stumbling around. They don't know who they are because they have this high fever, 105 degrees, and eventually they just die. So most of the time it's fatal. And whereas, like, you think of like CWD, a lot of times deer can live with it for years. EHD, a lot of times if deer get it, it's fatal. There is cases in southern U.S. where the deer can live because they actually have a built-up immunity in it. But so how it kind of, going through the cycle of it, it all starts with this midge, and kind of similar to ticks and things of that nature. They find a source where they contract the virus. So it's within that midge itself. So the midge, the female midge more specifically, so she'll go and she needs a blood supply to make the next egg production. So what she does, she finds that blood supply, which unfortunately for us big deer hunter, and you have a big buck, 180-inch deer that's next to the water, that's a lot of blood flow above his head. So that female midge goes up, she bites the antler, she gets the blood, she goes down to the water, and typically the muck, the kind of right where the water will meet the mud, she lays her eggs. Those eggs will slowly develop. They go into from the egg stage to larva to pupa to back to an aquatic adult insect. And they'll start that cycle again. And a lot of times, just for everyone listening and watching, they can do that cycle of the egg laying 3 to 5 times a season. So it's a long-lived deal, and it's going to keep on going until we get a first killing frost, and that's what's going to kill them off. Similar to a mosquito. When we get finally the frost, mosquitoes are gone. Same with the midge. Once we have that cold frost, they're gone. And once again, we just kind of then go into that cycle every single year, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And honestly, it's one of those things that I don't see it slowing down until things are done and actually fixed.
I got you. So stepping back a little bit, explain to
Yeah.
us the difference between EHD and CWD for those that don't know.
Yeah, so CWD, that's a protein anomaly. So it's a prion that goes into the soils. The deer can get it from eating weeds and grass and saplings, browse, you name it, they can contract CWD. And as it goes in there, it slowly starts denaturing the proteins in the brain and things that way. That's why a lot of times they're called zombie deer, because once the CWD actually takes effect, which could be, they could contract CWD when they're a yearling or all the way up to when they're 2 years old. And before you know it, now they become 5, 6, or even older, it can finally take its toll and kill them. So it's a different thing where it's not, it's, since it's a protein in the soil, it's not a virus, it's not a infection. So given that, there's not a good way to kill it or get rid of it because it is just a protein anomaly. So that one's a little different. Now there's some stuff out there like diatomaceous earth and all these things that guys are working on to try to fix the CWD issue, but it's nowhere near the population wipeout that we see in EHD. So for instance, like I know some people in Southwest Wisconsin get CWD issues and deer are living fine. The people eat the deer, no issues, right? But with that said, these deer can be 5, 6 years old, be positive, and you never would know when it had CWD. It just has it within their proteins and the muscles in their brain. You just wouldn't know it. Whereas EHD, you'll know if they have it. So that's a quicker virus, whereas, like I said, the CWD is a longer deal, but it's not as detrimental on the whitetail herd whatsoever.
Yeah. So do you have any statistics on like how many deer are killed by CWD every year compared to how many deer are killed by EHD every year?
I would say with EHD, I mean, so it's highly variable. So it all depends on a year for EHD. Like the highest numbers I've heard of in regions was up to 80% of a herd gone, dead. Whereas CWD, you might deal with a whole state that has a dozen or two that die. It's nowhere near the numbers, so you're never going to see a loss of a population because of CWD versus EHD. You can, and then the rebuild is crazy. I mean, you're talking 5 to 10 years of rebuilding a population. Where CWD, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the issues of that kill off. So, when it really comes down to it, CWD might be taking less than 1% of a herd away, whereas EHD, like I said, the worst case I've heard was up to 80%. And I'd say more on average is probably somewhere between 30 to 50% when you contract it and it's really hammering your property.
Gotcha. So on EHD, you said that they get fever. Is that what kills them? Or?
Yeah, so like the fever onset, so what happens and it's no different in humans. If you get a fever and you start getting too high, it'll actually start breaking down your muscles and your brain. It'll just start melting essentially everything away. And that's why like when infants are little, for instance, if they have a fever, you throw them in a bath quick to cool them down, right? Because you have that, you can essentially become brain dead with a high fever. And that's what happens to these deer. They're getting this high fever. They have no way of cooling it down. Eventually they're dead. They start bleeding internally and they just can't live through it, period.
Gotcha. So what are some like, warning signs if a landowner suspects they might have EHD, what can they look for?
Yeah, so the biggest things like what I always look for, and this is kind of where my aquatic background goes in, but so the Culicodes midge thrives in organic, rich, impaired water systems. So essentially what that means is a lot of muck, a lot of the growth, hot waters, drought years are the biggest thing. We have a drought year, which luckily for the most part in our country this year, we're doing pretty good with rains and things, which is going to help quite a bit with EHD. But if you're starting to see your water levels dropping, the water's starting to turn colors, that's a big one. So if you're starting to see a pond that used to be crystal clear and suddenly it's starting to turn greenish, maybe there's odors coming from that pond, excessive amount of algae and plant growth. And those are all things I started looking for. Another thing is lack of life. So if you look at a water source and there's no beetles, there's no, let's say, crayfish, there's no frogs, there's no beneficial aquatic life, that's a red flag. That means something's happening with the water. And unfortunately, the Culicodes midge loves those conditions. It thrives in those conditions because it actually doesn't do well with competition whatsoever. So if you're seeing a lot of muck getting exposed in these ponds, you're getting the odor issue, the coloration of the water changing, those are things I'd be looking for as possible red flags. And then also, like I said, lack of aquatic life.
So if a guy has a pond or something on his place and it's just, pretty stagnant, doesn't get a whole lot of activity, kind of sits still, can he put some kind of I don't know, a fountain or some kind of water movement system into that to help that situation?
Yeah, so I mean, airflow is going to be a big help. So like, for instance, just recently I was down at Leokoski's farm, and there was a pond that was in the middle of the woods with no airflow. I mean, it was stagnant as could be. There was no ripple in the water. When you have that rippling on the water, whether it be from a aeration system, solar, windmill, you name electric, if you can get airflow even just to start making ripples in the water, that's called atmospheric diffusion. That's how it's going to get oxygen. So if there is no movement, your oxygen levels are going to start crashing. And anytime you lose oxygen, it'll kill everything, right? I mean, fish, aquatic insect, whatever it needs to actually be in the water is going to start dying with lack of oxygen. So getting water movement is huge. Like even for me, like some of my little wildlife ponds I actually have little tiny solar little Chinese solar aerators that run my pond. But just I like to keep them circulating and keeping them turn over and things of that nature, just so my dissolved oxygen levels are higher.
So do we see EHD like worse in the Midwest or the South or, the North?
Yeah, so I mean, realistically, so South doesn't see it much. And a lot of it is because they had EHD long before we ever had it here in the Midwest. So their deer actually have an immunity to the disease for the most part. Our deer never were accustomed to this because we used to never have it. I mean, right? I mean, the first big case I ever remember is 2012. That's not that long ago in the grand scheme of Mother Nature. I mean, talking 13 years, that's not long. And with that said, I'm starting to see an escalation in the Midwest states. Western U.S. definitely had impacts. Like I said, that's more blue tongue, which is very similar. Like the Milk River one year out in Montana, they lost like 75% of their herd on the Milk River because they got wiped out the EHD. Now they're still having big issues out there. The Dakotas are getting hit hard, but I'm seeing it a lot in Iowa, Missouri, more northern Missouri right now, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those are the ones that I'm seeing getting hit the hardest right now is those states. So the Midwest is definitely like the bullseye when it comes to EHD problems right now.
We've all seen the videos. There's whitetail deer walking around and being crazy, like looks like it's sick, probably kind of looks like it's losing its mind almost. Would that be an EHD diseased deer seeing something like that? And if so, if a guy was to harvest that deer, is it safe to eat?
Yeah, so there's a potential that is an EHD deer. Now, one thing that I will point out is deer get sick every day, just like us. They get different diseases, illnesses, all that stuff. So there could be a lot of things. Like even I found one buck dead on my property years ago, and I actually thought my dad had shot it, but he didn't. And I walked up on it and run. And actually, what happened is he cracked his skull plate fighting, got an infection in his brain. That's what killed him. So there is those instances, right? And it's going to go in the ditch. I mean, most of us aren't going to be eating a deer that looks diseased or things that way. It's more like you're putting out its misery kind of deal. But
Right.
with that said, there's no data that, proves or shows that it's harmful to human consumption as of right now.
Okay. So is this midge you're talking about? Is it visible to the human eye? Can we see it?
If you look close, yes. So it's kind of like I always compare it to a fruit fly. Like if you're just walking through a house and there's fruit flies in the house, you're not going to see them from afar. But when you get close, you're going to start seeing all these little gnats. And there's a good chance that those are the actually Culecodes midge. So that's why they call them no-see-ums, is they're just so small, such a small gnat. Whereas like mosquitoes, ticks, all that stuff we can see. These are very hard to see unless you're really looking for it.
What can we as landowners do to reduce the risk of EHD on our property?
So a lot of it stems back, and this is kind of where, I guess, took the bull by the horns, but a lot of it stems to water quality. So any of these, when I think of like, all right, what state is getting hit usually the hardest? Iowa. Well, what is across almost every pasture, every property you see in the state of Iowa? Cattle ponds. Well, most of them are so gross, so degraded, so impaired that nothing beneficial can live. So without actually obviously putting stuff in the water, which we'll get into that. But the big reason why we're seeing an escalation of this is agricultural practices. We're going to more corporate farming versus, where they're generational farms. Generational farms are gone, going away every single day. We're losing the family farm. But those are the people that had grasslands. They had good CRP. They had buffers around their ponds. They had all these things in place to actually take care of water. Whereas now we're farming every row of corn as close to the stream as we can. So things we can do as property owners is, for one, start adding buffers, add prairie. Like when you talk CRP ground, you start talking some of these prairie grasses, they have 20-foot deep root system that are filtering machines. So they're pulling out phosphorus, they're pulling out nitrogen, they're pulling all these things out that can actually impair waters. Another thing we can be doing is get the cattle out of these ponds, put livestock tanks up for your cows. Yeah, I know it's convenient to dig a pond, but with that said, go and get actual water tanks for your cows. Don't let them wallow in them, all that stuff. That helps tremendously because now we can just give them fresh water. Like I think of central Kansas, where I deer hunt a lot, most of the pasture ground there, and a lot of it's because it's all sand, but they have little sandpoint wells and windmill wells that are feeding these water tanks to give the water to their cows. That's something we can be doing. Getting the livestock out of the water, out of the streams is huge. But other things too that, when you go into these things too, is like I was, on some recent properties looking, and there was a creek that went through this one property, and the whole agriculture runoff was going down into that creek system. But when that does, it's killing that whole stream system. Like up here in Wisconsin, we've lost north of 70% of our trout streams, just because of agriculture pollutants and runoff. So with that said, we can be doing more, BMP practices, so best management practices, to actually buffer our nutrient loading, try to keep fertilizer away from water sources, and riskily start looking at your water as more of a resource than just it's there. Because if you need to be managing your water just like you're managing your forest health, your food plots, you name it, you got to be managing it no differently.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk a little bit about EHD-fense, man. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so it all kind of starts back actually after I got out of college. So I went to UW Stevens Point. That's where I got my biology degree and water resource management degree. And as a college kid, I got out, and what did I do? I took my money, instead of saving it, I spent it on a Missouri lease. Because that's a smart thing to do when you go to school, is let's go hunting. Anyways, so got this 160-acre lease. And I was pumped. Like, we were getting giant deer. And up here at the time, I was going for 130s, 140s up here in Wisconsin. And so we're getting 180-inch deer in camera. I'm like, this is sweet. Like, with money well spent. And then it got to about late August, every deer disappeared. All the big bucks, except for one. One was left. And I got talking to a guy across the road, and he goes, yeah, we figured about 80 to 90% of our mature bucks are dead right now from EHD. I'm like, well, that's neat. I'm glad I spent money. Woo! Let's shoot nothing. So all I ended up shooting was a doe that year on a lease. So that was cool. With that said, I started thinking, because at the time I was a research director at a private pond and lake management company. So I was like, well, all right, let's figure out if this is an aquatic-based ordeal, because it's all about water and muck. How can we fix this? So I started working with some microbiologists, and all right, how do we fix impaired waters? How do we start restoring ecosystems, food chains within the system? And so over time, as a biologist, and my career took off, I started using different products, things of that nature, until finally I found the right combination, which is in the EHD-fense product. And what I found was, okay, the midge loves these organic rich impaired water systems. Well, all right, if I can take that, and this was my job as a biologist doing pond and lake management, is if I could stop the clock in Mother Nature and reverse it and start restoring ecosystem health, well, everything else is start going to come back and play, like your predatory species. So the midge is a prey when it comes to the grand scheme of it. And so as we started taking care of these ponds, and bigger ponds even, well, one thing that always kind of sticks out is clients would always come to me, they used to have like mosquito issues and all these things by their ponds. And I started adding these products that are in EHD-fense, and suddenly they were going, we don't get bit by mosquitoes anymore. We don't have issues by our pond anymore. I'm like, okay, there's a light bulb. And well, what we were doing is, since we were restoring ecosystem health, we were actually now encouraging aquatic life to come back in these ponds. So we were starting to get more frogs. We were starting to get turtles. We were starting to get dragonfly, scavenger beetles, all these different predatory animal, species that prey on midges. So like the dragonfly, one of their primary food sources when they're a larva is actually midge larva and pupa. And a lot of people don't realize that. So if they can't survive in that water source, but the midge can. Well, you just took the predator away. Well, I always think of like Australia when they introduced rabbits. Well, rabbits are everywhere in Australia because there was no predator. Well, it's the same with the midge. There's no predator. They're going to take over the whole ecosystem. As we started applying the EHD-fense product, so there's 3 components, which we'll get into a little bit, but we started seeing all this aquatic life come back into the pond, and suddenly we weren't having issues. Like I don't even see the flies and things of that nature on my deer around my ponds anymore, like deer flies even, because there's predatory species nearby. So it's no different. Like, they say you can walk around your woods with those little attached dragonflies that you clip on your hat and dragonflies won't bother you. Well, there's a reason for that, because it's a predator. So now we restore this ecosystem health and balance it. And also in the meantime, the muck is this big issue too, right? So so fixing the water, we've established that we have predatory species eat the midge pupa and eat an adult insect. But all right, now what about where they lay their eggs? That's the muck. So in the EHD-fense system, it's actually called de-muck. We reduce the muck as well. So we're actually taking away the organic sediment that they need to lay their eggs in. And so the 3 components of this are catapult, which is a biocatalyst enzyme. So the enzymes, what they do is by nature, they speed up a biological process. So just like we have a bunch of enzymes in our systems, in our gut, all that stuff, because it's helping speed up systems. It's no different in the water. So these enzymes start working on decomposition. They start speeding up the rate of decay. And what they'll do is they take this organic rich compound, which I talked about the organic richness for midge health, is all right. So now we're taking that and we're actually converting that. We're breaking that down into sugars and easier to digest material for beneficial bacteria. So bacteria is your building block of all water. And we want good beneficial bacteria, not harmful bacteria. So now we have these enzymes in place. And I always, back when I was doing my pond work, I always said the enzymes set the table so the bacteria could feed. They were the chef, bacteria was us. All right, thanks for the steak. And now we add the live water. So that's a water-soluble bacteria pouch. And they're simple enough where you can toss them in the water, they dissolve, they start spreading throughout the system. What the live water bacteria are doing is they're actually focused on the water itself, just the water health, not the muck, just the water. So they're going to start actually bringing back biological processes like the nitrification cycle. They're going to be breaking down all these organic within them, because there's a lot of suspended organics in the water too. It's not just the muck, it's also in the water. They'll break that down and take the phosphorus out so it can't be used by algae and plants and things of that nature. But they're also going to directly compete against things, like E. coli, salmonella, leptospirosis, like all these different bacterias that also can kill deer as well, which people never want to talk about, but bacteria can also kill deer. They're competing with that bacteria as well. So now we have the water situated, right? Well, now we have to figure out, okay, we made the water health better so we can get these beneficial aquatic invertebrates, aquatic insects, all these things that feed on the midge at certain cycles. But now what about the home, the muck? That's where de-muck, the 3rd component, which is a pelletized bacteria, is tossed into the water. And it kind of looks like a giant aspirin. I mean, it's probably that big around. But you toss them around the pond, they sink right to the bottom, and they'll start decomposing the organic muck, the sediment. And so like I did a case study on actually using de-muck. And in one pond we have here in Southeast Wisconsin, one of our clients, I did a study on it. And in one season, I reduced the organic muck by 7.21 inches. Wow. So when you think 7 inches and you think of, all right, let's just say that muck is a condominium or apartment building for the midge. We just took away the top 7 floors of a 10-story building.
That's wild.
They don't have as many places to lay the eggs anymore. Yeah, so that's a thing. Is now, all right, so now we just took all the water where we gave, like, it was almost kind of like, all right, live water and the catapult were the wolves. We put them out in the ecosystem. They're going to feed on, as I say, the midges, the deer, right? They're going to start eating all them when they're in the water. But now we also took the home away from the midge too. So there's really no way that midge can now flourish because it doesn't have what it needs. And if it does reproduce in the little bit of muck that is left, it's going to get eaten. Well, so now we just fixed a Mother Nature issue with Mother Nature. And that's what I've done my whole career. There's a lot of larvicides and all this stuff, but all that stuff is used incorrectly, in my opinion. So now we can use something that's 100% natural, has zero effect on wildlife, pets, people. I mean, we use this, even these products, like you can use them we use it in the campground industry. So there's a lot of swimming ponds up here in the state of Wisconsin. I know I know there's some in Iowa. I think you guys have some in Missouri. But these are swimming ponds are a big thing now for campgrounds. And their main issue is usually E. coli and salmonella. Someone gets that, they get sick, and there's a nasty review for a campground. So we had to actually add these products to the water to get rid of the bad bacteria. And most times when we got the water test back from the city, you couldn't even detect the harmful bacteria anymore. They're gone, wiped out. So end of the day, we just fixed the bacteria issue, which hasn't been spoke about at all. We got rid of the midges breeding ground, and we restored ecosystem health, all by using a product that's 100% natural, and it's something simple to do. So in the campground industry, this was a big thing too, is when those ponds were made, there was also bacterial issues that we had to deal with in those. E. coli and salmonella were the big ones. And a lot of times we'd add products like the live water and catapult to those. And that would actually strip and compete all that harmful bacteria. And on routine, just for our state regulation, we had to usually sample those waters once a week at minimum, just to show the water quality health, because obviously it's a public safety issue. And all those harmful bacteria were undetectable at all times. And I always hear this one story I have is there's a municipal pond that's not far from where I live here, and I took care of it, and they had about 500 geese came in. And we know what geese do. They crap up a storm. So the whole beach was goose poop. Well, they got a massive rain, all that went into the pond, and their salmonella and E. coli levels were through the roof. We went in there with just bacteria and enzymes, no pesticides. We applied a heavy dosage, and within a couple of days, we wiped out all that harmful bacteria, and it was back to restored water. So that's what's cool about this product, EHD-fense, is not only are we attacking the big issue on all our minds with EHD, so we're getting rid of the home for the midge. We are restoring water quality health to allow for beneficial aquatic inverts and amphibians and insects to come in. But also we're fixing the issues not talked about, and that's the bacteria issue in wildlife as well. So, and it's all 100% natural. So you're not killing nothing. It's safe for wildlife. It's safe for your pet. It's safe for people. I mean, this is stuff I put in my own pond that my kids swim in every day. It's to the point where the stuff is safe enough, and I don't recommend this, but I used to work with a guy that would test the stuff because he was just always interested in how things tasted, and it's fine. But so it's just a cool thing to me, like to actually use something that is, like I said, Mother Nature based and not killing things. We're not going on to kill stuff, but we're building back the food chain ecosystem, and it's a win-win. And all it is a simple process. And, and we'll kind of get into that right now. When I designed all this, I'm a mature buck hunter. And one of the things that can ruin your season is if you're intruding on your buck too much. Kick him out. He tolerates it only so many times. Well, a lot of these people that are going to even get this product, let's be honest, most of them are probably hunting mature whitetails. Or they're looking for that trophy, whatever it might be. They don't want to go on their property a lot. And I have some guys that just don't have the time even. They might not, maybe they're just shooting whatever they want, but they don't have the time to go and take care of everything weekly. So this process, like one kit, for instance, it's a monthly process for 5 months. You go out, you literally pour in about 6 to 8 ounces of catapult, one of the packets of live water bacteria, and a pound of the D-muck. And the whole process, I bet you, takes 45 seconds.
Wow, just dump it in and go.
Yeah. You're not out there with the backpack sprayer and all this crap and just going like, all right, I got to treat my ponds today. No, like the one day I was on a client's doing a food plot, I had it in my console, the live water packets. I just was tossing them in the ponds as I drove by. That's simple as that. And so I just had on my own property, for instance, I had a pond that was kind of turning south a little bit, turning a little green. So I went in and treated it with the EHD-fense. 2 days that water cleared up. Only 2 days. So it can work quick. I'm not saying that's the case for every pond. The more impaired it is, the longer it's going to take to fix it. But like I had it as quick as one treatment can fix it, up to the worst ones I've seen, it might take a couple years. It all depends on size and, like I said, how impaired that water is.
So talk to us about, does it come in a kit? You got to buy them separately? How does that work?
Yeah. Yes. So there's a couple of options. So, one thing is there's a kit. It's actually, I don't know if I have it here, but so it's a little pail that's probably, I think it's like a 3-gallon bucket. And in there is a 32-ounce container of the catapult. There is 5 pounds or 2.5 pounds of the live water pouch, and then there's 5 pounds of the demuck. And all you're doing, so like, let's say if you have 5 tubs on your property, 5 tanks, cattle, whatever it might be, a Rubbermaid container, sawed off 55-gallon drum, but it'll take care of 5 of those tubs for 5 months, or it'll take care of one pond up to like a 20 diameter pond, let's say 20-foot diameter pond, 25-foot diameter pond for an entire season. So one kit is a full year of application. So it's not like you have to buy a kit each time. Now, if you have bigger ponds, like let's say you have an acre pond, right? Then we have what we call the land manager kit. So we do have a bulk kit, so that way you can treat these bigger water sources, and that kit treats up to a half-acre pond for a whole season. But for most of us with deer ponds, wildlife ponds, you'll buy one of these kits, maybe 2 of these kits a year, and you're set. And it comes out to be about like $45 a month, to take care of your water. And if you're doing tubs, it's like $9 a tub. Like I always tell everyone, don't go to Quick Trip or the local gas station once a week, and you got yourself good, healthy water.
Yeah, that ain't bad at all. So does it matter how deep the pond is, like, for this treatment?
So the more depth you have, the actually easier it is to manage. Case in point, you could have a 5-acre pond that's 20 feet deep and a 5-acre pond that's 5 feet deep. That 5-foot deep pond is going to be worse. Depth is going to help you. So let's say if you have a bigger pond and it's super deep, and as long as it has steeper slopes, you don't need as much product. Whereas if it's a super shallow base, now you're going to need more product potentially. So volume does help. Most of these deer ponds I'd say I see are like 3 feet in depth. And, average depth is probably only 1.5 feet realistically. So these tubs are kind of calculated out that way. Like we have it where one kit treats up to 2,500 gallons of water. I would even say you could probably stretch that up to 5,000 to 10,000 gallons of water, depending on how impaired the system is. But the depth does help. Other things that help the pond too, in addition to the EHD-fense, is plants around a pond, sedges, rushes, iris, arrowhead. Planting the shorelines also helps to filter the pond. Also, kind of a fun little fact about dragonflies, they require a perch to hunt. So they'll actually, like a falcon, they'll perch up on a reed and hunt, and then they'll go and start feeding. So it's kind of neat. So that gives that habitat. Frogs go in there, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so with that said, I mean, that's one cool thing about EHD-fense, and why I'm so happy kind of bringing it out is like, if someone has that pond that they're like, I don't even know where to start with this. I don't know how much I need, all that stuff. That's what I did for a living, is build management plans. So people can easily get a hold of me and say, hey, Zach, I have a 1/4 acre pond. How would you treat this? It's this deep. It looks like this, sends a picture. I can build a management protocol from a little bit of data.
How long has EHD-fense been out?
So it came live in July. So not too long ago. I mean, the beginning of this month, that's when it launched. And
is the public receiving it so far? Are they thinking this is some kind of snake oil product, or are they receiving it really well?
I mean, there's definitely the guys that are like, just another gimmick. Well, this is snake oil. And the thing about it is, and I had the same issue when I did this for my living, but because it's hard to see, it's not like treating weeds or algae where you see the effect. It's dead. It worked. It's not like that, But overall, I'd say it's been received very well. I mean, like I said, I was on Lee Lukoski's farm this morning. Actually, I was talking to Ted Nugent. So a lot of people are hearing it and going, okay, this. What we always keep hearing is, this is the most revolutionary product on the industry in the last decade. Yeah. Because realistically, up to that point, I mean, we've had not much innovation. It's just been rinse and repeat for a lot of products. It's the first one on the market for EHD. And so a lot of people are excited about it, but there's a lot of education that we're putting forth into it first. Because one thing, and this is through my whole career, is water is very unknown to, I would say, 90% of the public. It's something that isn't as easy as throwing a seed in the ground and seeing it grow. It's just not. It is a living, breathing organism. And once you think you figured out the water, Mother Nature throws a curveball. It's just how it's been. You always got to change things up with Mother Nature. We've always done that, where we'll change how much we're using. We'll back off on some. We'll increase some things. But overall, it's been very, public's been very receptive to it, but I think a lot of it is they want to see bigger names using it first to go, okay, this is the ticket, so, and that's why we kind of like, we're partnering up like Lee Lukoski and Ted Nugent, people like that, because they want to be able to help show it as well. So like when we were at Lee's farm, for instance, he already had a deer dead in the pond, and that was only 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he already had EHD dead deer, so already seen the issues. And I've already heard of cases in Ohio. They're already seeing it getting hit. Dr. Deere, he just made a post today about a new variant that just came into our country of EHD. So it's a virus. It's going to constantly change. So even using some kind of vaccination, all that kind of stuff, if it's always evolving, you can't stay ahead of it. It's no different than a disease in a human. So that's why it's cool about the ecosystem is that status quo. That's a baseline, no matter what. That doesn't change. We can keep a good ecosystem and keep it restored. It's no different than invasive species management in the woods. If you let buckthorn run wild or autumn olive or, multiflora rose, it's going to take over until you do something about it. So you do maintenance. It's no different than the pond. Don't let the midge call it home. Do something about it.
Yeah. That was going to be one of my next questions to you is what's the outlook, for this year as far as EHD is looking? Is it looking to be a pretty bad season or?
No, I think this year we're going to have it no matter what. It's inevitable. We're going to have it because it's always pockets, as you've seen, like, this area got hit. These counties got hit harder this year. These counties got hit the next year. But there's a couple things that are going for us that are really helping. One, rain. We're having a lot of rainfall, so we're not having drought conditions. We're keeping water widespread, so deer aren't all congregating, cattle aren't all congregating. That's a big help. The second thing I'm seeing a lot of is we've had excellent hatches of things like dragonflies, water beetles this year. So we have a lot of predators in the air and in the water system. So between those two things, I don't think it's going to be that bad of a year as of now. Now, I have seen water turn bad in weeks. So if we got one of those droughts like we did last year when we were dealing with like 2 months straight of no rain, well, we could be seeing an issue, let's say, coming in September. And now that we don't have frost as early as we used to have, it could just be saying, EHD hit in September now. So we're not out of the water. Things look better than they did last year, though.
We haven't had any rain for about 2 weeks down here, and you can tell it, man. It's getting dry.
Oh, yeah. And it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long at all where you start seeing it.
Yeah. It kind of looked like it might rain today. The clouds got, covered up pretty good, and then it never did anything. So
you just got to get out there and do a rain dance, Kicks. I know you have it in you.
They don't seem to work for me very often anymore. I don't know. I'm not doing them right. So.
But no, so yeah, like I said, the good news is it looks better, but it's one of those things that, and that's one thing I want to point out too is, people might think we're getting late in the season to fix water. We're not, so that's one thing too I wanted to point out is, yeah, we're about to be in August, but like, let's say for instance, like down by you, Kicks, you have at least 3 months left of treatments you could be doing, so depending where you're at, like even in the state of Wisconsin here, we're going to be, I'll still be putting in EHD-fense in my ponds up through September. So we have time still to fix the water.
Yeah, hell, it don't get cold down here until about October 31st.
Yeah. Yeah, and it used to not be that way.
Yeah.
So like we don't get the winters up here anymore. We don't, the killing frost is what you really need to get rid of the midge, which is 28 degrees. We don't get that till we're super late. I mean, there's more times I'm wearing my lightweight hunting gear in October than I used to ever. I mean, now it's like I'm sitting there like, all right, it's a t-shirt day on October 27th. Sweet.
Yeah, I know it, man. It's gotten the same way down here. It's kind of crazy, really. Well, brother, what else you want to mention about this EHD fence there before we jump off here?
I just say that, for everyone listening and watching, at the end of the day, the kit itself retails for $229.99. And for some, that's like, that's pretty expensive. I get that. But what I would mention to everyone, if you have a bunch of ponds on your property, let's say you have 15 ponds on your property, anything you do to do it is going to be a help. So if you can only, let's say you need 3, 4, 5 kits, but you only can afford one, I would rather see you buy the one and focus and maybe look at your more problem ponds and maybe leave some alone, but at least add something. A little bit goes a long ways. Do something. I mean, it's no different than your own health, changing. All right, I'm not going to have 3 beers tonight. I'm going to have one. It's the little changes. I'm not going to get that gas station burger. I'm going to start making a sandwich at home. Same thing goes for these water sources. A little bit goes a long way. So if you can't afford as much as maybe you think you need, at least try to get something into the water. Like I said, whether it's just you do one kit and you're trying to spread it across a lot of ponds, I'd rather see you put something into the water. But other things too is look at the plants. Try to, there's some nurseries up here in Wisconsin that sell seed. So like Kester's Nursery is one. They're out of central Wisconsin. But you can buy arrowhead seed. You can buy bulrush seed. You can buy all these reeds and sedges. Plant your shorelines. We still have time to do that. Like, this is usually when I would be doing all my aquatic plantings at my old career. So get those shorelines planted, stabilize those soils. But also just take time, look at your water, grab the muck, smell it. Might sound weird, but get in that, get dirty. If it smells like rotten eggs, you got an issue. If it smells like clean, just mud, you're probably doing decent when it comes to organic, richness. So like I said, and reach out to me. I mean, honestly, as a biologist, I live for this stuff. I have passion for it. I've fixed so many water systems in my career. I mean, I would say I probably managed well over 2,000 different water bodies in my career, and probably more, honestly, because I was doing probably about $25 to $3,000 or 3,000 applications a season through my whole career. So when you think, all right, did it 20 years? That's just a couple treatments, a couple applications. Honestly, through a pitcher, through all that stuff, I mean, that's what cool about EHD-fense is. We're not just a random group of guys that decided, let's just make money off EHD. No, this is biology based, is built and designed by an aquatic biologist. And it's because I want to fix the issue that has affected me too. So that's all work together. Yeah, we can't treat all the water. That's another comment I always heard is like, I can't treat all the ponds around my area. Yeah, but that's like saying, I'm not going to, if I don't shoot that buck, my neighbor will. Well, maybe you are the neighbor. Right. Maybe you're the neighbor with the bad water. Fix what you can. And as a conservationist, that's all we can do is fix what you can, pay it forward, and that's work towards actually fight this EHD a little bit more.
I love it, brother. I've got one pond that I definitely need to get some work on, so I'll be purchasing some from you here pretty soon, probably. So
awesome.
Yeah. Well, guys, Zach, I appreciate you jumping on here, man. It's a good informational episode, and learned a lot today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's the first official podcast with the new gear, a little bit of zoom in stuff, but
yeah, hey, we'll figure it out. It'll all work itself out. Took a little break here, but we're back now, man. We're planning on releasing these as often as we can anyway. So
awesome. I appreciate it.
All right. How can people get a hold of you, brother?
Yeah. So for the EHD-fense products, so the website is EHD-fense.com. So it looks like EHD-fense, like in football, .com. But then my email from that is zhaas, ZHAAS, at EHD-fense.com. But yeah, you go on any of the socials. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Obviously, I'm also on Basecamp stuff too. So reach out to me on there. I mean, my phone number is more places than I thought it ever would be, put it that way. But no, reach out. Don't hesitate. You got questions on it. I'm always ready to rock and roll. If you have a question you want me to talk about, even on TikTok or Instagram, I'm always ready to video something. So
awesome, brother. Well, I appreciate your time, man, and thanks for joining us, guys. Appreciate you tuning in. This has been episode number 22, I believe, of the Basecamp Country Podcast. Don't forget, it's more than just dirt. It's a lifestyle. Zach, we'll see you later, brother. I appreciate you, man.
Sounds good, man.
We'll see.